It is our pleasure to be joined by a man that you can hear on SiriusXM radio. You can see him on Fox Sports, and you can hear him on any podcast platform with the Geoff Schwartz is Smarter Than You podcast. One of my favorite named podcasts in the history of podcasts. Geoff Schwartz, former teammate in the house. How we doing, big guy?
I am good, buddy. I'm excited for football. The Pac-12 finally decided to release a schedule. It took them like forever, but they finally did it. So I get to see where my Ducks are going to be at this year. I don't know. We might win a game or two. We'll see what happens. And I'm excited for football, man. It's fun. I mean, college football's over. I get it, but we still have NFL, so it's a lot to talk about.
Yeah,
we're still waiting on our schedule with the Big 12. We have no idea. We got new teams coming to the conference. We don't know where
they haven't done it yet?
No.
Well, are you guys staying one more season? Like, I don't know. Are you guys even staying?
Yeah, we're in there for 2023.
BYU and Houston are coming in. We don't know who we're playing that's coming in new. We don't know what old teams of the conference we're not going to be playing. Strange.
Just no idea, huh? They're slow playing you guys.
Hey, now, we got you on to talk some NFL playoffs, but how'd you feel about year one under Dan Lanning out there at Oregon?
I was ranting about this beforehand. We have to be smarter, not us three, but generally we talk about things in sports, right? So, for example, when we talk about first-year head coaches, there's two different categories of first-year head coaches. There's first-year head coaches that have never been a head coach before, right? Venables, Dan Lanning. And there's first-year head coaches at new jobs. Sonny Dykes, Lincoln Riley, Kalen DeBoer. They're not the same thing. Why do we talk about them in the same way? Like Brett Venables, Dan Lanning, it's their first time being a head coach at any level, anytime. They're going to have their ups and downs. They're going to figure out their roster. They're going to try things in year one. They're not going to do it in year two. Lincoln Riley, I know it's probably a sore subject to talk about, but he's at USC and I do Pac-12 radio. He knows exactly what he's going to be. They were the exact same team they are at Oklahoma, just at USC. Like the exact same thing. So to compare what he did to what Dan Lanning did, or what Sonny Dykes did to what Oklahoma did last year, is not fair because they're two separate situations. Now, in year two for Dan Lanning or for Brett Venables, I would expect to not have as many. In Oregon won 10 games. It wasn't a terrible season, but I would expect some things to be different. And now you can compare the coaches a little bit differently than you can in year one. So I just feel like but like the way we talk about first-year head coaches, they're not the same thing. They're not the same first-year head coaches.
That makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. Gosh, you are smart. That title of that podcast, it's so good. It's so good. Okay, let's jump into the NFL playoff stuff. And, looking back at Super Wild Card Weekend, Geoff, what team impressed you the most? What really stood out to you about that first slate of NFL playoff games?
Probably the Niners offense. They put up 38 points with a quarterback that didn't play all that well. I mean, Purdy didn't play terribly well, and they scored 38 points. It's hard to do in the playoffs. I don't care who you like. Most of the time, when you score a bunch of points, your quarterback plays pretty well. It's kind of hard to do. And they didn't play terribly well, from the quarterback position, and scored 38 points. That specific kind of side of the ball to me stood out. You can say the Cowboys. I get, but Tampa Bay kind of like the thing about Tampa Bay is we knew they were terrible, and we tried to convince ourselves that Tom Brady was going to make it right in the postseason, and they just played terribly like they had all season long, and they lost. Like they did exactly what they did all season. We just convinced ourselves it wasn't going to happen. At least I did. And so to me, it was the Niners offense was the best thing I saw on Super Wildcard Weekend. That was the first game that we saw all the way back early on Saturday.
How do you evaluate Purdy at quarterback? He hadn't lost a game. Hadn't been asked to do a whole heck of a lot because they're so talented everywhere else. Got a great defense, great skill guys. Like for us, like Gabe and I in the Big 12, we've seen a ton of Brock Purdy. And there's a lot of good, but there are some plays. He has some of the most insane turnovers you'll ever see in your life. And like, I'm just waiting for that to happen, but I don't know. Maybe he's found something new there.
Well, look, when you evaluate any player, you have to look, I think, at the system they're playing in, right? There's some players that transcend the system. It doesn't matter what you're in, you're going to be elite. But Purdy, I think, benefits a lot from the Shanahan system. I mean, look at the weapons they have. Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, Kittle, they have Juice, They have Mitchell running back as well. They have Brandon Ayuk. I mean, there are plays where they put Christian McCaffrey at like Z and put Debo at running back and put Ayuk at X and then put Juice at Y and then put Kittle in the slot. Like, how do you defend some sort of offense? And then at the snap, they're all like crossing each other and going this direction, that direction, and boom, a guy's wide open. I mean, they hit the same pass concept 3 times for huge gains out of 3 different ways. They basically ran a guy up the seam and then they ran a deep crossover, like to clear out the safety, ran a deep crossover. They did it 3 separate times from 3 different formations, 3 different ways, hit it 3 times for big gains. Like, that's what this offense is. It's not a knock on Purdy at all. It's just what the offense is. Now, the question becomes, as you move on the playoffs, you're playing a Cowboys defensive line that's really, really good. And we know that Trent Williams is not going to be beaten. So it's kind of like left guard on. If you pressure Purdy, is he going to be the same quarterback? He's really faced that in his career yet. When you go to Philly, I think they beat the Cowboys. You go to Philly in 2 weeks and you're in the link. It's good. That's a day game. That's the early game of the championship weekend. So it's, it's just kind of just getting in the nighttime. It's really, really loud. It's cold. Like, are you going to be as good in those situations? Because that's a difference, right? That sets quarterbacks apart. It's not what you can do when everything's good. It's, can you do it in 2-minute drill? Can you do it on the road? Can you do it in stressful situations? And we've seen it one time in Oakland or Vegas, whatever. He did it in that game, but Vegas stinks. So can he do it against the Cowboys? And can he do it now against the Eagles? I think, look, the thing they do in this offense is they keep him out of bad situations by being very good on first and second down. So instead of being 3rd and 8, they're 3rd and 2. And that's a big difference in how you call a game and how you protect your quarterback.
I'm with you. Now, you kind of hinted at, you think you like San Francisco in that matchup with Dallas. Is that because you trust San Francisco's offense more? Do you think they have the better defense, or is it just Shanahan and the play calling and them and that game being in San Fran?
Well, a couple of things. One is I think the Cowboys this year, we've seen sort of like kind of an up and down thing, right? Where, they one good week, one bad week, one good. Like, I just don't know how much to take from playing a bad Tampa team. That's part of it too. But I think the Niners have a big advantage in a space that I normally don't say this about the Cowboys, is the Niners defensive line has a really big advantage in this game with the Cowboys beat up offensive line. So, you move Tyrod Smith from left tackle, who was hurt all season. He didn't play over there, over the right tackle. He's been good, but not nor his normal self. And then you have the rookie Tyler Smith and left tackle. Bosa can pick and choose, kind of like who he wants to go against. Then you have inside with Armstead against one of the 2 inside guys. Now, Martin's obviously a Hall of Famer, but Armstead has gotten Martin before. The left guard's a problem. Biotic at center is playing hurt, trying to fight through it a little bit. So I think that there's a big advantage for Niners defense in this game against the Cowboys. That's why I like the Niners in this game. Their offensive system kind of leads to points. Their weapons lead to points. And defensively, I think their defensive line controls this game.
I think one of the things that's interesting about it is, if you just look at the playoffs and who's left, every quarterback is mobile. Right? Some more mobile than others, but everyone is athletic and can move around. And Brock Purdy is athletic now. He can do some things with his legs. And, Dallas going against Tom Brady, which we all know how great Tom Brady is. He's never been athletic as far as moving around, and he can manipulate the pocket, but he's going to get out and run and pick up first downs. And they're able to absolutely tee off on him in the pocket. And they've got a good, pass rush. Dallas does. That's going to be totally different the way you defend San Francisco. Like, obviously with the spread of skill guys, but the one thing that you still have to account for is the quarterback run game, pulling it down and stuff like that with Brock Purdy.
Yeah, you do it. And Purdy is more mobile than people give him credit for, but you can kind of like shrink that kind of pocket down, right? Like, you can kind of work that pocket down, not from the left side, like you're not being Trent Williams. So it's going to be coming from the right. And then you can, you can scheme up kind of like someone to be waiting over on Trent Williams' side, kind of like a passive rush. You bring everyone from the right and you try to force Purdy to roll to his left. And then you have someone sort of waiting over there. It's kind of the way I think they're going to do that. But yeah, he's more mobile than Tom Brady, but he's not a guy that wants to do that right now. He can do that, but that's not what he wants to do. So I think that's a big kind of difference in what the Niners and the Bucks are, but also the Niners, everyone else. Like, that's not what the offense is. You look at, the rest of the quarterbacks really with Burrow and Allen and Mahomes and Lawrence, like those guys can scoot. It's sort of like part of their game. It's not in the game plan per se, except Buffalo, but those guys kind of scoot a little bit more. It's sort of built into what they can do. It's not really what Purdy does. He can do it, but I think ideally, if he rushes for 0 yards, Shanahan's fine with that.
Okay, looking at some of these other games in the divisional round, Jacksonville at Kansas City. Clearly, Jags coming off the high of that, whether you want to call it a comeback or you want to call it a collapse for the Chargers. But do you think Jacksonville can give the Chiefs a game there in Arrowhead?
I think they can. I don't know how much of a game it's going to be. They're a great story, but they're ahead of schedule. Is Jacksonville in year 1 of this kind of rebuild with Peterson? But they have a good quarterback. That always kind of gives you the option. They played in Kansas City about 7 weeks ago, and Kansas City kind of played a B game and kind of won pretty easily. It's just hard to play this Chiefs team off some rest. It's what Andy Reid thrives in. His record off a bye is crazy good. They're at home. They've never lost a divisional game. They score a ton of points in the first. I looked this up the other day. They've had 4 games, 4 straight years in the first game of the playoffs. They scored 31, 51. They scored 22 against the Browns, but Mahomes got hurt in the third quarter. They had 22 points early in the third quarter before he got hurt, and then 42. They scored a lot of points in that first playoff game. Like, they're just ready for these games. And it's kind of crazy. I never played a team like this where they just wait for this. They wait for this postseason. Like, they went 14-3 this year. Great record. They lost by 10 points total the entire season. That was it. And they just wait for this time of the season. That's all they play for, is right now, starting on Saturday night in Arrowhead. Their season really starts this weekend. I don't think Jacksonville's ready for that. That's it. Like, it's not a slight at Jacksonville. I just think Kansas City is primed for this moment. It's what they play for. It's what they gear for the entire offseason. And Jacksonville's just not good enough. And that's okay for Jacksonville. You're in year 1 of this kind of sort of reboot with Peterson.
And it's a great home field. How do you think this Chiefs team stands up to some of the teams they've had in years past?
Well, obviously they don't have that explosive Tyreek Hill option. The offense is number 1 in all efficiency. It's number 1 in third down. It's number 1 in all scoring points. It's great offense. But they don't have like that break glass Tyreek Hill type of player. So it's a more methodical type of offense. That's different than other years. I think their tackles are not as good as they've been other years as well, but that's been corrected the last couple of weeks. I think Brown has played better the last 6 or 7 weeks. And then defensively, they play a lot of rookies. This was not supposed to be a year where they were the 1 seed. It just wasn't. Now you can argue they might have not been if hadn't been for what happened with Hamlin, but they just weren't supposed to be. I think they play 4 rookies on defense, pretty considerable amount of time. But the defense, and I've always said this about Kansas City, and the way I genuinely feel about defense when you have a good offense is just be average. Just be average. The year they won the Super Bowl, their defense was 14th in efficiency. That's all you need. They got up to 17. They were like 25. So like they're playing a little bit better on defense. The problem, guys, I'm telling you right now, their special teams is atrocious. And it's really odd because for so many years, they were so good on special teams. They've muffed like 4 punts this year. They've missed a bunch of extra points and field goals. They're bad on special teams. And that's going to cost them, probably not this weekend, but it could cost them against the Bills or Bengals.
I got you. Looking at the Giants-Eagles game there at the link, and I can't believe I'm going to ask you this, but with what we've seen from Daniel Jones lately, which quarterback do you like better in this game? Like Hurts coming off the injury, a little rusty, didn't exactly look great in the season finale. I don't know, man. Daniel Jones looked spectacular last week.
I think people are overthinking this game. Where are the Giants better than the Eagles? Just curious. Like where in the field are they better than the Eagles? There's one position you can argue.
Running back.
One. Thank you. One position. That's it. And by the way, some of these positions are significantly better. Like Eagles, even without Lane Johnson, significantly better in the offensive line, defensive line, even with Dexter Lawrence and Leonard Williams. Eagles, better. Wide receiver, better. Tight end, better. Defensive backs, better. Linebacker, like they're better everywhere. I think people are talking about this game with kind of their heart and not their head because the Giants story is so good. The Eagles can come out flat. They totally can. And they have been, right? They had Gardner Minshew for 2 weeks and Hurts kind of looked, but the game plan was really vanilla in that last game of the season. He didn't run the ball at all in that game. I think the Eagles just kicked their ass. I don't, this doesn't feel like that hard of a game for me. You have a much better team who's rested and motivated playing a team that is, they are very well coached. But Minnesota, guys, stinks. They're bad. They're not a good football team. Like if they were 11-0 in one score games this year, was Minnesota. If they had, let's say they went like 8-3 in those, they don't even win the division. Like they're not even like a playoff team. So like, to me, Minnesota's not, just don't get sucked into the trap. But the Eagles are better than the Giants. Can the Giants win? Of course, it's the NFL playoffs, but they're not. They're not going to win.
Would it be a factor if Hurts continues to not run? Like if that part of their offense is not going to be there because of the injury status?
Yeah, I think it changes what they do on offense, right? I mean, having a quarterback be able to run really affects what a defense can do in the run game, right? Because it kind of, when you run the ball and that quarterback can run the ball, it kind of keeps that backside linebacker hanging just a little bit longer than they want to. And the running back pops free and the backer's just not there, right? Or now it's a 8-yard gain, not a 4-yard gain. And so just the ability for that to be an option, I think really changes the way an offense operates. And even just in a play action pass game and getting on the edge for just easy bootlegs and stuff like that. But I think he will run the ball. I think if he's playing in this game, which he will be, he's off the injury report, which just kind of doesn't really matter. I think he will be fully back to healthy. It's the playoffs now. You just go for it. You have to go for it if you're in this spot, which he is, and go ahead and give it your all. If you get hurt, you get hurt, but I would play your full game and be exactly who you are.
Yeah, I'm with you. I've had a lot of fun watching that Eagles offensive line, and I wish they were completely healthy heading into the playoffs, but we'll see what it looks like.
They don't need Lane this week. They need him next week to play the Niners. This is not a week where they miss him as much, but I would almost pick the Niners to win that game if Lane doesn't play. Like Bosa's gonna destroy the Eagles backup right tackle if Lane and even if Lane plays, he has that sports hernia. Like that's a hard injury to play through if you're a lineman. Like it's just kind of a bad time for Lane to get that injury. If it happened in week 2, he could have gotten surgery and been fine for the postseason, but it's kind of happened at a bad time.
Yeah. And especially like he's having the season of his career and he's playing
so well. Yeah.
Lights out. Okay. The only other game on the slate, I think, is the one a lot of people think is going to be the best football game.
Yeah.
Bengals going to Buffalo with what we've seen from that defense and also, their inability to run the football. I know Josh Allen is fantastic, but do you trust Buffalo?
Well, the turnovers kind of worry me, right? Like Josh Allen he's kind of at times come back to turnover prone Josh Allen. We're just the fumbles, the interceptions aren't great. Now, some of the interceptions last weekend were tips and whatnot and weren't exactly his fault. But I will say in this sort of game, like we see against when they play Kansas City or when they have other big games, they kind of have the break glass offense, which is when they use him in the running game. And that changes what the Buffalo offense becomes, right? Because it's hard to defend quarterback runs when they're used the way Buffalo does them. Not all the time, 4 or 5 times a game. Typically, they kind of line up everyone on one side of the field and run back to the other side of the field with less defenders over there. And Allen's a great runner. So I'm not as concerned, I think, with that. It's more about the turnovers to me. I just think that both offensive lines might have a little bit of trouble in this game with the pass rush on both sides of the ball here. The Bengals are probably down 3 offensive linemen. And I've never seen a player like Joe Burrow be able to overcome offensive line issues as much as he has. But eventually that does sort of matter, right? Like that does matter at some point. You're on the road. Now, Von Miller not playing is a huge loss for the Bills. This is why they signed him, was for these games. And it's unfortunate he got hurt. I think it was on Thanksgiving Day because they could have used him in a game like this. So I had thought the Bengals were the best team in the AFC heading into the playoffs. I don't know how much their game against the Ravens should matter to changing my opinion about that. They got a lot of luck in that game, right? That turnover, the Ravens go up 24-17. Instead, they turn the ball over. And I think the Bengals, the quality that they have, and I wonder if you guys agree with me, like they don't make mistakes. Like they don't turn the ball over. They don't have dumb penalties, and they don't have defensive blown assignments. When you watch them play, there's rarely like an opposing player on offense running free down the middle of the field. Like they don't have long explosive run plays they give up. And it's just hard to play the Bengals, I feel like, for those reasons. So
don't get anything free.
It's nothing easy. And so I will go with the Bengals ever so slightly. But this is the one where to me, it's a toss up. I feel great about the other three. This one, I don't really know.
Is there a matchup? I'm assuming, I think we all are, Kansas City moves on. Is there a matchup that is better or worse, in your opinion, for Kansas City? Like what they'll be, if you're a Chiefs fan, who you're pulling for?
So I am a Chiefs fan. I think they need to beat the Bengals. Like that is I need to play the Bengals to beat them. They've lost 3 times in a row to the Bengals. They lost them in the AFC Championship game last season in Arrowhead. And like, I want the Chiefs to beat the Bengals to go to the Super Bowl. That's what I want. Now, if they play Buffalo, that game is in Atlanta. I live in Charlotte. I can drive to that game. If the tickets are so expensive, though, maybe not. Geez. But I just think that they need to beat the Bengals. Like I want to play the Bengals. I want them to beat the Bengals. So I'm also rooting for the Bengals. I know it's maybe a weird take to have after they can't beat them, but I think they should beat them. I think they should beat them for the right to go play in the Super Bowl.
That'd be a lot of fun, man. That would be a lot of fun. Okay. Last one, and we'll let you get out of here unless you really want to take a deep dive into Oregon's 2023 schedule. Super Bowl pick. What do you think?
Oh, man. See,
it's the obligatory question, man. I got to ask it to you. Come on.
The funny part is I had the Bills all year long, and now I picked the Bengals to win that game. So I kind of have to, I don't know, man. If the Chiefs defense can like do anything, like just do something, they could win the Super Bowl. Like just be average. Like just be, the Brock Purdy thing, man. If they had anyone but Brock Purdy, I don't know why. Like, do we trust Brock Purdy to win a Super Bowl?
Listen, you're talking to 2 guys that watched Brock Purdy throw a pick 6 behind his head. Laterally.
I know. I watched him play at Oregon in the bowl game a couple years ago. Like he
probably would have beaten Oklahoma at least twice if he didn't have horrible turnovers. And one of them would have been in the Big 12 championship.
So like, I just can't, it just blows my mind. Like, I don't know. The Niners, I think, are the best team, but the most important position, they're not the best, not even close in the NFL right now. I don't know. I'll go Kansas City, I guess. Maybe I'll homer this pick. Because if they get the Bengals at home, I think they're going to beat them finally. Maybe not. And then I would take them over the Eagles or Niners in the Super Bowl.
Listen, I was at that game last year at Arrowhead, right?
Yeah.
Blake I went to see Blake Bell.
Yeah.
I was basically celebrating in the stands with the Chiefs fans.
Like,
basically, we're going to the Super Bowl, baby. I was drunk and having the time of my life. And then that second half unfolded. It was wild to watch in person.
There's like, if you had told me that they were throwing the game, I would have believed you. Like that's how inexplicable that was. And they make it very clear they were not throwing the game. But like, it was so inexplicable. Like Pat had never played like that. There was some, and it wasn't all Pat. There were some other issues happening, like with receivers. I think part of the reason why they got rid of all the wide receivers is sort of the issues with routes being run incorrectly and just not being on the same page really showed up in the second half of that game. Andy Reid's refusal to run the football again showed up in the second half of that game. It was wild, dude. Like I think again, like the competitor in me wants them to beat the Bengals. Like I want them to have to beat the Bengals and go through the Bengals to get back to the Super Bowl. I feel like that's the way it should go.
I'm with you. Geoff, It's always fun catching up, man. I'm sure we'll have you on again soon once college football rolls around. Enjoy the playoffs, buddy.
Thank you, guys. Take care.
See you, man.